Welcome to Telesur. I'm Carla Gonzalez, and this is From the South. We begin with our top story, Chile. Polling stations continue to receive voters in this historic referendum on whether to change the country's dictatorship-era constitution. More than 14 million Chileans are eligible to vote on replacing the current charter, which dates back some 40 years to the rule of General Augusto Pinochet. Apart from deciding whether to replace the constitution, Chileans will also vote on what kind of body will be in charge of writing it. Either a so-called mixed convention with 50% of members from Congress and the other half elected by voters, or one that is 100% elected by popular vote. The referendum is the main result of last year's protests, which began in October as Chileans gathered nationwide to call for reforms to the country's pension, healthcare, and education systems.
I have become accustomed to voting early because as well as this time we have other things to get done during the day.
We hope that lots of people come out to vote. It's important to vote, and we hope they come with the same enthusiasm that all of us here have.
For the latest updates in Chile, we head to our correspondent Alejandro Kirk in Santiago. Hello, Alejandro. How's the voting process coming along?
Hello, Carla. Greetings from Santiago. I'm now standing at the La Victoria, the Victory, a working class neighborhood, which is a symbol of the revolutionary struggle of the Chilean people. This was an area taken by working class people in 1957, and we're standing now exactly at the 1st of May street. So that tells you more or less what the story is behind this this community. And we come here because of our vocation as Telesur of being with the working people, the voices that are never heard. On my back, this school is a school called La Victoria, is where the polls took place today. Now it's empty as it is in most of the country, it seems. There was a huge, by all accounts, turnout in the morning, but now the polling stations are mostly, not all of them, but mostly empty. So the government, the electoral service, said that they would release results by 9:30 p.m. local time tonight. But to talk about how the election was in this neighborhood which is so close to us as Telesur, we have Benjamín Lillo, who is a journalist of Señal 3, Signal 3, the local community TV station, which for 23 years have been broadcasting for this community, facing all kinds of obstacles, repression, embargoes, persecution, and yet it is very well known space for people here. That's where most of the news they get them from there, and they also put together Telesur packages. So Benjamin doesn't speak English, but I will translate for him. And first I'm going to ask him, so how was the voting this morning here at La Victoria, this emblematic neighborhood? ¿Cómo fue la elección aquí hoy en La Victoria, este vecindario tan emblemático?
Bueno, las elecciones aquí se desarrollaron con normalidad, con calma.
The elections here were developed in calm, with tranquility.
Y hubo un gran flujo de gente durante todo el transcurso de la mañana y el mediodía, aproximadamente hasta las 3 de la tarde.
People came to vote in large numbers until midday, past midday by 3 p.m.
Al igual que al resto de la comuna, también el mismo flujo de gente se pudo observar. Y
We could also did around visiting other places or other polling stations in the in the district here, not just the neighborhood. And it was the same situation, huge numbers of voters.
Y bueno, a pesar de todo el contexto del coronavirus, la gente muy motivada a pesar de las grandes filas que tuvieron que esperar.
In spite of COVID-19, the pandemic, people were willing to endure long queues that formed because of sanitary reasons.
Se pudo observar también muchas personas de tercera edad, ¿ya? También
Many elderly,
ejerciendo su derecho a voto, también muy motivados por participar y eso fue una gran sorpresa.
and many elderly were also very motivated to participate in this decisive poll, and it was a surprise for us.
Y bueno, durante la semana aquí, antes de las elecciones, aquí en la población, hubieron muchas manifestaciones, pero siempre llamando a participar del proceso.
In this neighborhood, there were a whole lot of demonstrations, rallies, but in the past week, also clashes with the police, but always people calling for participation, active participation in the referendum.
Y bueno, nosotros como canal comunitario, también dando nuestro mayor esfuerzo con todas las complicaciones que ello implica, pero sacando el trabajo adelante, pudiendo cubrir varios puntos a nivel nacional.
Gracias. And we as community TV station, we did our best to cover the entire situation, not only in La Victoria, but elsewhere in Santiago and the rest of the country. Gracias, Benjamin.
Gracias.
Thank you. Well, it seems that because from the interviews that we have done, from the people we have spoken to, it seems that the turnout is actually huge. We won't know that, of course, until 9:30 this evening. But in our experience, it was very different from other elections. People were out. People were standing long hours on queues because of this desire to change. Even and that was visible everywhere. And it seems that the approved option in the referendum is winning a landslide victory. And that's very important. If the turnout is big and the approved wins by a large margin, it will probably be a turning point. It will change the political landscape in the country. That's what social organizations are hoping for. Carla.
Thank you very much, Alejandro. That was our correspondent Alejandro Kirk from Santiago. So let's learn more about the national 2020 plebiscite and the process behind it.
Since 1980, the country has been ruled by the constitution created by Augusto Pinochet's military regime, which has intensified economic, social, and political inequalities. In the 2020 national plebiscite, the Chilean people will decide where they will move toward a process that will generate a new constitution and the mechanism to be drafted. More than 14 million Chileans were called to vote. Citizens will be able to choose between two ballots. The first will have the question, do you want a new constitution? Which can be answered, I approve or reject. And the second, what kind of body should draft the new constitution? Which shall be chosen from a mixed constitutional convention composed of equal parts of popular elected members and members of parliament in office, or a constitutional convention in which only popularly elected members will be accepted. At the end of the election period, the members of the Bureau receiving votes shall count the votes obtained in each of the ballots submitted. As the tables complete their counting process, which will generate preliminary results, the definitive ones will be published on the website of Chile's Electoral Service. In case that the I approve option wins, the constituents will be chosen to write the new constitution and will meet on April 11, 2021, same day in which the municipal and regional government elections will be held.
We're taking a short break. Join us again in a minute.
Una travesía para descubrirnos. Buscamos conexiones perdidas.
No nos queda otra que luchar, porque no tenemos nada que perder.
Realmente es por todos.
Recorremos el mundo con Reportajes Telesur.
Acompañamos a los pueblos que resisten en cada una de sus luchas.
Somos esa ventana que se abre para visibilizarlos entre fronteras.
Thursdays, only on Telesur. In a world infested by inequalities, abuse of power, and injustice, the American journalist Abby Martin covers the struggle for fundamental rights worldwide, deepening into the search of files which uncover the empire's strategies through our screen and web platform in English. The Empire Files with Abby Martin. Tuesday, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. Let's continue with news. Venezuela is holding a voting drill on Sunday to get people familiarized with the voting process ahead of the December parliamentary elections. 55 polling stations have been set up for the day to test the operation of an electronic voting system, especially the transmission and counting of votes. This drill will allow electoral technicians to check if the system functions smoothly and evaluate its efficiency in case it needs any adjustments. All necessary sanitary measures have been put in place in all polling stations to prevent the spread of COVID-19.
I've seen all sanitary measures implemented. Everyone I've seen is maintaining social distance and using a face mask. The pandemic doesn't prevent me from voting.
Our correspondent, Leonel Retamal, has more details from Caracas.
This Sunday, a voting drill is taking place in order to test the electronic voting system and the sanitary measures. We are currently in a school in the capital, Caracas, where, as you can see, people are lining up to participate in the drill. The country's security forces are also deployed to ensure that the voting drill is carried out smoothly. The voting process goes like this. Firstly, people show their IDs to the election personnel, then head to the polling booth, where they use the electronic voting system to cast their ballot. After voting, the voting system will print out the ballot, which will then be deposited in the ballot box. And lastly, the voter will sign a document to confirm their presence at the polling station. According to certain experts, Venezuela's electoral system is one of the most transparent ones in the world. So, today's goal is to fix any potential problems that might come up.
The head of Venezuela's Electoral Council spoke about this drill.
It is important to note that today we are accompanied by international election observer missions, and each of the audits they carry out are also accompanied by a technical team of election observers who evaluate the softwares and hardwares we use.
Thousands of Mexicans have rallied in Mexico City to show support for the government. They marched from the Independence Monument to the capital's main square in a rally dubbed the March of the Million People. They denounced an anti-government movement which has stationed itself outside the offices of the president. Anti-government protesters say they are not satisfied with the way President Andrés Manuel López Obrador has been handling the coronavirus pandemic.
We came to support our president Andrés Manuel López Obrador. We came to support him because now we do have a president. Never before did we have a president. They never knew we existed.
COVID-19 cases in Colombia have reached 1 million, becoming the second Latin American country to reach the figure in less than a week. Colombian authorities have reported that the country continues to record around 8,000 new infections a day, even though there has been a slow decline of newly confirmed cases since August. Colombia imposed a 6-month lockdown to reduce the spread of the virus, but nearly 30,000 have so far died from the disease. Latin America has been hit particularly hard by the pandemic due to weak public health systems, social factors like poverty and poor government decisions.
It was not only reaching 1 million. We are certain and we are afraid that what is coming is going to be worse. The number of hospitalized patients is going to be larger. If we had any deficiency before, if we had to increase the number of intensive care units, the number of ventilators and ICU beds, what is coming next, all is still going to be insufficient.
After 7 months of confinement in Panama, small groups of people arrived on Saturday at beaches both in the Caribbean and the Pacific. Panama announced this week the opening of its beaches to the public as of Saturday and the lifting of the absolute quarantine on Sunday, in effect since last March. The country has maintained a stable rate of infections and deaths from COVID-19, but specialists warn that the reopening of activities could lead to a resurgence of the disease. Pope Francis has named Washington Archbishop Wilton Gregory as cardinal, making him the first African American to hold the title. The 72-year-old Gregory is one of 13 cardinals in the new class announced by the Pope on Sunday, a promotion that comes as he's trying to rebuild trust, as the church has been rocked by sexual abuse cases. The Vatican said the ceremony to elevate the new cardinals would take place on November 28th. Gregory was appointed Archbishop of Washington last year to take over for Cardinal Donald Ware, who had been accused of mishandling clerical abuse cases. He will be eligible to vote in any papal election until he reaches the cutoff age of 80.
We bishops will always have the deepest regret for those who were abused and who must live with that pain and all of their lives. No apology can undo that. Yet we must never cease to remember them, reach out to them, and ask for their forgiveness.
We'll take a short break now. Don't go away.
The Pakistani journalist Tariq Ali examines the mass media influence promoted by imperialism. Get access to the analysis of the socio-economic and political life of the whole South America on our screen and platform in English. A critical place committed to the truth to determine the major events that transform the world today. Mondays, only on Telesur.
Una travesía para descubrirnos. Buscamos conexiones perdidas.
No nos queda otra que luchar, porque no tenemos nada que perder.
Realmente es por todos.
Recorremos el mundo con Reportajes Telesur.
Follow our program minute by minute. Our signal in audio format is now also available on our website. Get the latest updated facts and news emerging around the world from a Latin American reliable angle. Telesur, connecting the global south.
Thank you for joining us again. Spain has declared a second nationwide state of emergency and ordered an overnight curfew across the country in hopes of stemming a resurgence in coronavirus infections. The government imposed an 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. nationwide curfew, but regional leaders will have authority to set different hours, close regional borders, and limit gatherings to 6 people who don't live together.
We, therefore, approved once again the state of emergency because it is the most effective way to slow down the contagion curve and keep the virus away. The battle we already know will be difficult, but with social discipline, with resistance, with unity, and with a spirit of victory, we will achieve it again.
No hay confinamiento general en este nuevo estado de alarma.
There is no general lockdown in this new state of emergency, but the more we stay at home and the fewer contacts we have, the more protected we will be, and the more we will protect our loved ones and the health of our society. We do not need to approve measures to oblige us to do what we need to do. We know what we need to do. Less mobility, less contacts, and the fewer possibilities the virus will have of infecting us. Therefore, let's stay at home as much as possible.
The Italian government has imposed at least a month of new restrictions across the country to fight rising coronavirus infections. The last 2 days have seen daily new infections reach close to 20,000, and Italy still has Europe's second highest virus death toll after Britain at over 37,000.
Bars, ice cream shops, pastry shops, and restaurants will close at 18:00 hours on all days, including holidays. After 6 p.m., however, they can continue to work for home delivery and takeaways. A maximum of 4 people can sit at a restaurant table. Unless they are larger families, it is forbidden to consume food and drink in public squares and streets after 18:00 hours. Gyms, swimming pools, wellness and spa centers will close, and also arcades, bingo halls, dance halls, amusement parks, and of course discos are still closed. Theaters, cinemas, concert halls also closed. This is a particularly difficult decision as well as others which have been taken. The world of culture has, in fact, been in great pain for months now. Museums are still open.
I believe that the economic damage that the measures will cause to bars, restaurants, gyms, and other activities will be much greater than any health damage that the population would suffer if these activities were to remain open.
It's better to have this time a new lockdown for another 2 months. Many people complain about the closure of bars and restaurants from 6 p.m. It's better to close them from 6 p.m. Since they're not essential, than to shut everything for 2 months.
Ukrainians have voted in local elections under a new electoral code that decentralizes power from the government to local authorities. The polls are considered the most consequential local elections in Ukraine's modern history, with all local officials up for replacement and the new local governments being granted expanded financial and political independence from the central government. The new system also mandates that women occupy no less than 40% of local council seats. The vote has also been seen as an important test for President Volodymyr Zelensky, a former comedian who was elected in a landslide in early 2019. 3 people have gone missing after a Russian oil tanker was damaged by an explosion in the Sea of Azov. The Russian Emergencies Ministry said the explosion on the General Asi Aslanov took place on Saturday as the tanker was en route from the port of Kavkaz to the port of Rostov-on-Don. Authorities said 10 members of the tanker's 13-person crew have been rescued, while 3 remaining were believed to have been thrown overboard by the blast. Officials say the tanker wasn't loaded and the explosion may have been triggered by flammable vapors left behind from the vessel's previous cargo.
The research and rescue operation is currently underway. Throughout the night, we used a helicopter and 7 vessels as part of the research and rescue operation. For the people who found themselves overboard Altogether, we searched through around 400 square kilometers without results. Now, with the coming of daylight, we're continuing to use 6 vessels and have expanded the research area. We are additionally using 2 M18 helicopters of the Emergency Services Ministry with rescuers on board.
Thousands of Iraqis have gathered in the capital Baghdad to mark the first anniversary of the revolt against the government. Protesters say the ruling class has failed to deliver basic services to the people and is also plagued with corruption. About 600 protesters were killed and 30,000 were wounded in clashes with security forces across the country last year. This was before the movement launched last October lost momentum and then ground to a halt due to the coronavirus pandemic. Protesters say they would ramp up their demands this year and rally at the high-security green zone where government offices are located.
October 25, 2020. It's been a year since the October Revolution. We still want a nation, and to get the corrupt out of the government and to find out who are the murderers of the protesters.
Thousands of protesters in Thailand have gathered again in Bangkok to keep pressuring the government. The rally was called on Saturday night after Prime Minister Prayuth Chan-o-cha ignored the protesters' deadline to step down. Protesters' core demands also include a more democratic constitution and reforms to the monarchy. The protesters accused the Prime Minister Prayuth, who led a coup in 2014 as the army chief and was returned to power unfairly in last year's general election because laws had been changed to favor a pro-military party. And with that, we ended this news brief, but you can find all of our stories on our website, telesurenglish.net. And be sure to find us also on social media. Until next time.